Hi, I'm Gabe.
I'm Jaime.
I'm Kelley.
We haven't been here in a long time.
I don't remember the last time I was on the podcast.
It's been even longer for me. Managed to avoid it.
Yeah. Do I have a scratchy throat from last night?
From screaming at your children because they had a snow day?
No, from the
Screaming at
Metallica.
Metallica.
Oh, that's right. 5-time
Yes,
Metallica.
His children had a snow day, and then he left his wife home alone with them all night, too.
Yes. For Metallica.
This nerdy white man has seen Metallica in concert 5 times.
Yes.
Twice below 0.
Yes. What I do think is noteworthy about the Metallica concert from last night. There is a reason why I brought this up. And
Sure.
for our listeners who aren't giant Metallica fans, A, what's wrong with you? And B, it's a heavy metal band from the 80s.
It's a dad band.
Still around.
So
Yes,
a dad band.
that was acknowledged last night about all of the gray hair, and there was a warning: if you're over 50, please stay out of the mosh pit. But
Age discrimination.
that is my child knocking at the door. Not now.
Cold.
Okay. Don't worry about it. This is a wonderful podcast. Okay, so the point that I was making about Metallica is I've seen them do this in 2 consecutive concerts. Because, heavy metal band and all of these, older white guys in the audience, thrashing their arms. But the lead singer, he makes a point, if, this is your first Metallica concert, raise your hand, woo, if you've been here before, and, he tells everybody, welcome to the family. And he very explicitly says, you are all welcome here. Everybody is welcome in the Metallica family. We don't care what the color of your skin is, what's between your legs, what God you pray to. If you're here to rock, you are welcome. And so I think it's a very nice thing that this heavy metal band makes a point of expressing inclusivity as a part of their show. They don't need to do that. And I feel like that's a great standard. So if your organization can't meet
Metallica standard,
Metallica's standard of inclusivity, then you really need to be looking at your own values.
I feel like a lot of rock bands have also kind of come out and been more conservative than you perhaps would have anticipated.
Probably.
And it's been really weird to be like, oh, I liked you, but you're just an old white man.
Right. Right. And I'm not saying, it was a bunch of white people in the audience. So it's not like this was some great moment, but I feel like expressing those values out loud, that was something that was a positive, and I applauded. So I like that. Okay. So that's my evening last night.
How many other people had been there 5 times?
Many. I think 5 times for that audience is probably about the mean, about the average.
Well, I mean, come on, it's a 80s band, so I mean, it's not like this is the first time they've toured.
I've seen They Invite Me Giants twice in concert. They're a lot of fun.
Nice.
That's me.
So
I got to sit down and watch the concert. It was great.
Hashtag getting old.
Yes. Okay.
I'm the youngest on this by 10 years.
I know.
Yeah. It's an aging crowd. But that was fine. It was fun. So that was the reason why I was down in Cincinnati yesterday. You were down in Cincinnati, Jaime, for actual work.
An actual work-related reason.
What happened in Cincinnati yesterday?
So in Cincinnati yesterday, they had a hearing on part of the Down syndrome band's court challenge.
Okay.
Part of it?
Part of it, yes, because the state of Ohio, with Mike DeWine as Attorney General, note he's now governor. We have a new Attorney General. But so when we file a court case, the first step of a court case is to see if the court will block the law from going into effect as it goes through the court process, getting a temporary injunction.
Which we did.
Which we did. And instead of then just letting the case proceed, Mike DeWine had to be a super jerk and say, no, I want to appeal that temporary injunction. I don't think it should be blocked while we go through the court process. So that was what the hearing was yesterday. It was a hearing on the state's appeal of that temporary injunction to block the law from going into effect while the case proceeds through the court.
So it's just DeWine being extra terrible.
Yes.
Great.
It was an appeal he didn't have to file. They could have just let that stand and then gone through the process to see who wins and who loses through the court process. But no, we've got to be a jerk at every one of the levels.
Right.
And if we hadn't gotten the temporary restraining order, this would have gone into effect March of last year.
Yes.
So it's been almost a year where we had this restraining order.
Yes.
I'm just getting my timeline right.
Yes. Well, and court takes forever too.
Yes.
So the fact, actually, we were talking yesterday, and the fact that the hearing happened this quickly was actually pretty shocking to all the lawyers.
Almost a year later.
Almost a year later. It was actually posed much more as it's been less than a year and we're already here. So yeah, I mean, the court goes very, very slowly. So yeah, this isn't actually even like the bones of the case, but it really is an important piece because you do have to lay out the case in order to get the injunction. So in order to get the injunction, you have to meet certain qualities. It's not just you want an injunction here, have it. So you have to prove that the likelihood of winning the case. So you have to argue a lot of the pieces and the main points of the case. So what we saw yesterday wasn't just fighting about the injunction, but was, the state presenting a lot of its case on why this is constitutional. Spoiler alert, it's not. And
it's like really super extra not constitutional.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday basically the state argued that it's not a ban on abortion. It's just another restriction. So that you can restrict abortion, you just can't ban abortion. So it's fine.
But this basically
is a ban.
Yeah.
I mean, there's really no argument to be made there. Yeah, there was a lot of kind of ridiculous arguments from the state on how, and also just kind of completely ignoring actually the way the world works in a lot of ways. Imagine that. So, one of the arguments was, well, she might have this reason for having an abortion, but she might change her mind and use another reason to actually have the abortion. He used the analogy that it was kind of like a lawyer starting a case, arguing this one point and realizing that that's not their strongest point and moving on to another point and focusing their arguments on that point.
Right.
But the law that we're arguing here says that the person can't have an abortion if any part, even the smallest, tiniest little part of the decision is based upon a prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome, a test indicating Down syndrome, or any other reason to believe that the person is having the abortion because of a Down syndrome diagnosis or test result.
So like over the age of 35.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so to break this guy's argument down, so even if the woman had come in and talked to the doctor and said, well, I want to have it for Down syndrome, and then left and came back the next day and was like, no, I've totally changed my mind. I want to have it because I just can't have another baby right now. The doctor already has that knowledge.
Right.
He can't attest to the fact that he didn't have the knowledge the day before.
Right. Yeah.
There was a lot of ridiculousness. And
I mean, it's not a good law. It's hard to defend something when it's just so obviously terrible.
Yes. Well, and how do you, one of the arguments that Jesse Hill on behalf of the ACLU fighting for preterm on this case made yesterday was Ohio's definition of the word knowledge is very, very, very broad. And although the law, the Down syndrome ban does not require the doctor to inquire to the person having the abortion why they're having the abortion. There's no requirement for them to ask that question. But Ohio's definition of knowledge includes a failure to inquire about the information. So how does a doctor then go ahead and attest in writing, which the law requires, that says I have no knowledge, if they didn't inquire, because the law on the word knowledge in Ohio requires inquiry about it.
Every time I hear about what's happening in court, I'm more and more thankful that I did not go to law school.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
This does sound like, that somebody went to mock trial, and they had to come up with the most absurd example
yes.
for students to argue over just to give them a taste. That's how obscenely
Ridiculous.
Just
is still is.
ridiculous. Yeah,
Mhm.
I wonder if it will be mock trial in 20 years.
probably.
Probably. So yeah,
Yeah.
so yesterday it was just the arguments. We won't hear probably, I would guess, for at least 6 months. I mean, we're still waiting on, other
Right.
things that have been argued previously. So
But since this is over the stay, we need the stay to be held in place.
yes.
Because otherwise, if this bill goes into effect, and this is the big thing where it would be banning abortion, is because it charges doctors with a felony
Yes.
based on the thoughts in that woman's head, just like what you just said.
Yes.
And so if you were a doctor and you were at risk of being charged with a felony based on what your patient might be thinking,
Yes.
you probably wouldn't take that patient.
Yeah.
And that's what closes clinics.
Yeah. I mean, certainly, it would be very detrimental. We haven't seen any of these go into effect anywhere. It's been blocked in the states where it has been passed. So it would be interesting to see how far doctors would feel they would have to go, because again, the letter of the law is one thing, but when a doctor is facing a felony, like you just said, they're not going to get anywhere near the line of illegality here. They're going to stay well away from it. So it very well could have much larger implications beyond just the letter of the law.
Right. And it's really tough to get that point across to people because they hear the name Down syndrome abortion ban and then they start developing their own opinion on Down syndrome, which is honestly not relevant to this bill. The bill is about banning abortion access. It's by charging doctors with that felony. And so when people talk about the bill, they need to understand that this is an abortion ban.
Yes, it has nothing to do with disability rights or any of those things. Because if you actually cared, as we talked about as the bill was passing, if you actually cared about supporting families that were raising children with Down syndrome, you would be passing family leave policies. You would be passing universal health care. You would be passing, financial support for these families and all those kinds of things, making sure that our special education programs and schools are funded because they're underfunded by multiple millions of dollars every single year. Like, these are real things that actually could improve the lives of individuals living with disabilities and the families that are raising children with disabilities. But we didn't do any of that. We banned abortion. And that's what this bill is about. It's about banning abortion.
And those things you just described weren't just like hypotheticals. Those
they were introduced
offered
amendments. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They wrote those up and put them, handed them out on the floor and said, hey, do we want to do this?
Nah.
And the Republicans said no.
Yes.
The Democrats brought forward all of those as amendments. The Republicans tabled the amendments, would not even take a formal vote on them.
Yeah.
Hated the idea of providing families with special needs children with additional financial and healthcare assistance. They said no.
Yes. Cool.
Right.
Because this is about banning abortion and nothing else.
I feel like there's been a lot of news in as far as like abortion access is going, like the last 2 weeks, because New York just passed the Reproductive Health Act into law, and Rhode Island is introducing and is considering one. And then also like Louisiana now has to have transfer agreements, and their clinics might close this year. So it's weird week.
And Louisiana is looking at another one of these Down syndrome bans.
Yes.
Louisiana's and Indiana
has one
that's been challenged, and there's a hold on it because everywhere this gets challenged, it gets defeated, except theirs has gone all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, who is, you said, deciding on whether to hear the bill, right?
Yeah, well, the weird, because we were actually talking about this yesterday. So thanks to my lawyer friends, I know exactly how this works. So yeah. I feel like I have piecemeal law school knowledge at this point. But so when you appeal to the Supreme Court, there's no deadline for the Supreme Court taking up the case. It's just when their docket gets filled for the year, that year is done.
Okay.
So it could sit there forever and ever and ever and ever.
Gotcha.
So where we are right now, and the legal experts I was talking with yesterday, they seem to think that it's not going to be accepted for this year's arguments, because I guess they've scheduled through like late April or something like that at this point. So the chances of it getting picked are slim to none for this year. But unless they proactively say, no, we're not taking up your case, which they can do, If it just sits there, it just sits there. So they could actually take it up for arguments in the next Supreme Court session, starting in October or something like that. So
Great.
So we might have an answer, but more likely it will just continue to sit there.
Right. Okay.
Much more likely to get something out of Louisiana on the Supreme Court this week than Indiana.
Have transfer agreements been rejected by any district court?
No, because transfer agreements had not really been challenged to this point, because the court has seen them. They have been challenged in a couple places and been upheld because for some reason the court sees them very different than admitting privileges.
Okay.
The court has ruled admitting privileges are unconstitutional, but for some reason see transfer agreements as less of a high standard.
Even though they're really
The exact same thing.
yeah.
It's an agreement with an individual doctor versus an agreement with an entire hospital. And frankly, I think an individual doctor getting an agreement is probably easier than getting an agreement with an entire hospital. But
Neither of which are in any way
No.
medically necessary.
Mm.
It's all just trickery to try and block access to clinics by charging doctors with crap.
yes,
Cool.
Fun times. Speaking,
speaking
of,
of medical
crap,
trickery, that was a good little
Yeah.
transition there, Gabe.
So leadership in the Republican leadership in the Ohio legislature.
Has changed.
Yeah. It changed but stayed the same.
Yeah.
Has introduced, along with Ohio Right to Life, 6 new bills. They got their agenda for 2019-2020. So we now know what we're going to be looking at in the next days, weeks, months for the next 2 years.
Spoiler alert, it's more BS.
It's
the same stuff we've seen.
Oh, with some new fancy stuff too.
What I thought was funny is they unveiled the 6-point plan. They didn't call it that because I don't know why they didn't call it, because then it sounds like an organized thing. But if you read them down in order, the bills are blocking access, a bill based on a lie, a bill to block access, a bill based on a lie, a bill to block access, and a bill based on a lie.
No, the last one is paying other people to lie.
Yes. But it's blocking access, lie, block access, lie, block access, lie. I'm like, at least change up the pattern so that it's not like really obvious what you people are doing.
Sounds like a really terrible movie. 3 lies and 3 blinds.
Right.
But even the blocking access is all still based on lie.
Yeah.
Don't let them get away
Sure.
with that shit.
The first one is
sorry.
Ohio Right to Life is... You
Oops,
swore, now I'm
sorry.
going to go back and... bleep it.
I did BS a minute ago. I was so proud of myself.
Okay, so topping the list of Ohio Right to Life's hot garbage is their first year. They did this very late in the game last month, but they're now in support of the 6-week ban.
Yeah, I'm sure that the people who've been pushing it for the last 8 years are like, welcome to the party and thanks for taking credit for all the hard work they've done.
Man,
Right.
I love watching the anti-choicers infight. It's great.
Yeah.
It's great when they lose.
Yeah.
But this now is a bill that Mike DeWine has many times during the campaign and since then
Yes.
said
Yeah, I'll sign
that
it.
he will sign.
Mhm.
So the point that our boss has been making, that Kelley Copeland's been saying over and over again, is since Kavanaugh, we can't trust the courts. They no longer provide that backstop. We know we can't trust the governor because he said he'd sign the bill. So the big decision on whether or not Ohio's going to have safe and legal access to abortion care now lies with your state senator and state representative.
Scary proposition.
Very scary proposition. So that's why it's important to be at the State House, to call your leadership in the State House, call your representative and say, hey, wait a minute. The game has changed.
Yeah.
This is no longer a hypothetical.
Mhm.
I don't support these bills. Neither should you.
Yeah, this is no longer just a political football that you're tossing around. This is actual people's lives, and it will impact actual people's lives. And, the legislators really need to think about it. This isn't just check off the box so that you get reelected. This is you are putting people's lives at risk.
Right. Yeah. I mean, blocking access, continuing to put up incremental obstructions that would have the effect of closing clinics, or basically just taking abortion off the table as an option for people altogether, that forces women who can afford it to leave the state of Ohio for care. It forces doctors to not practice here in the state of Ohio because they're prohibited from doing so. And then the worst case is the women that are most likely to be actually blocked by these are denied access to abortion care at all.
Mm-hmm.
That sucks.
Yep.
That's criminal in my mind, So, and then, the last one on here is, again, more crisis pregnancy center money. Ohio has funded them through the last 2 budget cycles at $1 million a piece, and through the sale of Choose Life license plates. We're handing over cash out of the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families Fund that should be money for low-income Ohioans, handing that over to these fake clinics to lie to people about what their options are when they walk in the door thinking they're going to a healthcare facility, and they get an ultrasound, but there isn't really a doctor to read that ultrasound because they're not a healthcare facility, and then they're lied to.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Ohio Right to Life agenda.
I don't have anything to say.
Yeah, I know. Kelley's just going to sit in the corner and
This is the garbage that this lobbying group and these extreme legislators are forcing on Ohioans. And they're held in place because of gerrymandering. These aren't actually free and fair elections here in the state of Ohio. When you walk into the polling place, you get to vote, but the way the political lines are drawn, it's not fair.
And they're fighting redrawing them. So
Right.
Yep.
And so this is what we're going to be fighting against for the next 2 years.
Uh-huh.
Although they might shove all this stuff through the state budget and it'll be done in 6 months.
Very possible. But can we talk about New York for a minute? Because I don't think you did last week. Did you talk about New York with Robin last week?
No, me and Robin Marty had a great conversation about her book. Everybody should buy her book. But we did not talk about New York.
So let's talk about good things first.
What's New York doing?
So New York passed the
Rhode Island too.
Yes, and Rhode Island's working on it. Passed the Reproductive Health Protection Act, which basically ensures. So when we talk about Roe getting overturned or gutted, it doesn't mean that abortion would be illegal everywhere.
It'll be legal in the same states it was. So New York, California, some other liberal states that people can't get to.
Yes, but in order for it to be a secure right in those states that would allow it to continue to happen, they would need to pass proactive legislation that actually makes it legal in their states. So New York's just getting the jump on that and proactively saying that even if Roe falls, New York will protect access to abortion in their state.
And it also repealed some language that had been outlawing it before, or parts of it before.
Yeah, so it clarified some really draconian legislation laws that were in existence for people who are having major problems in pregnancy later on. So it clarified the law for later term procedures where a fatal fetal anomaly was happening or a major health problem was happening with the pregnant person. So previously, New York law, even if the pregnancy was doomed, it was 100% a fatal fetal anomaly, and
still have to go
you would still have to go out of state or continue that pregnancy until it was risking the person's life or you went into labor naturally. So you had people in New York, finding out at 27, 28 weeks that the pregnancy was doomed and having to continue it for another couple of months before they went into labor. So the law now allows for procedures to happen in that time frame where these very specific situations occur. Does not mean, like all of the anti-choice BS out there, that New York now has abortion legal through the day before you deliver. 100% not accurate.
Nobody wakes up at 36 weeks and it's like, I'm gonna go get an abortion today.
Yeah,
it doesn't happen.
No, it just doesn't. So that is what, to clarify the later term part of that is what it does. It does not just open it all up, because God forbid anti-choice organizations actually tell the truth for once. Might pass out if that ever happened.
Right.
Lies, lies, and more lies. So yay, New York, yay, Rhode Island. I think a bunch of other states are talking about doing it too. So that's very awesome.
Hopefully Washington State.
Yeah.
Right.
Colorado.
Yes, we need more good reproductive health policy.
Yes.
Something good that did happen in Ohio is we have the introduction of a new infant mortality bill That is from Representative Tavia Glonsky and Representative Thomas West,
Just
both Democrats.
Akron area.
Yes.
Akron is a powerhouse of legislators. I like them.
Yeah, it really is. This is something that Republicans like to mention as an idea that they would like to work towards. But for some reason, infant mortality reduction wasn't part of Ohio Right to Life 6-point plan. It's
like they only care about abortion.
I don't understand why it's not. Throw it in your agenda. Here's a free tip for Ohio Right to Life. Throw this crap into your agenda.
They'd probably just screw it up anyway, like they did adoption law.
Probably.
But imagine that, like, the opportunity to work together on something.
Right. It's completely absent. Money for kids, increasing, school lunches so that kids get a quality meal at school. Doing all the things that would have helped the families raising children with Down syndrome, all of these positive ideas, they completely just throw them straight in the garbage can, and Democrats are like, hey, these are decent ideas. Let's introduce them as bills.
Mike Anadakis would much rather build Trump's $20 billion wall on the southern border than actually do any of those things. So, yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, for Golonsky and West doing fabulous infant mortality stuff.
Yes.
And also, to give credit where credit is deserved. I will give all the credit to Representatives, actually about to become Minority Leader of the Ohio House, Amelia Sykes, and Representative Janine Boyd for their amazing work last year on House Bill 1, which expanded Ohio's domestic violence laws to include dating violence, because we did not allow people experiencing dating violence to get protection orders and get the same kind of protections you would if you were experiencing domestic violence in a married relationship.
Wow, that's a terrible oversight.
Yes, we were one of the last states that didn't have it. So House Bill 1 passed last year, but I guess there were some pieces of state, not law, but how administrative agencies worked. So yesterday, because of Minority Leader Sykes's and Boyd's work, Mike DeWine actually signed an executive order expanding these same kind of protections to state employees. So rewriting kind of how state agencies deal with domestic violence to include these dating violence relationships with time off and those kinds of things. And also, I think some punishment levels for employees who perpetrate these kinds of things on their intimate partner. So,
right.
Congratulations to, and I think actually Nathan Manning was in on that too, but most of the work was Amelia Sykes and
this is an executive order,
yes.
So it's in place right now.
Yes.
It's not like a bill where it's going to go through the process.
No.
That's terrific.
Yes, it was awesome.
Yes.
So yay.
Okay. All right, so that is the Fun Times legislative wrap up.
I love when things are so common sense that everybody's on board.
Yeah, unfortunately, it actually took 2 sessions to get House Bill 1 through.
I mean, I believe it, but I'm glad that it still does.
Yes. Right. It eventually gets done. Yes.
Something that's less important, but still kind of fun to talk about. Julie Klausner, she's on a TV show called Difficult People. That's funny because considering the person she's dealing with.
Yeah, it is really hilarious.
Right. She got bumped off a flight by John Kasich.
Yes.
Who took her seat. It was
that's such a John Kasich move.
It really is.
I was like, yeah, that sounds like him.
And she was just absolutely livid. And recognizes John Kasich for being the terrible person that he is, having defunded Planned Parenthood twice, passed a handful of explicit abortion bans, plus many other incremental restrictions during his administration. We lost half of our abortion clinics here in Ohio. Julie Klausner understands that John Kasich is not a good guy. And so she put this out there. She got trolled by, Twitter.
Yes,
and made a statement and said, listen, for every person who trolls me, I'm giving...
And no, it wasn't even just trolls. It was anybody who commented. So you can even comment positively. So nice. Everybody who commented back at her.
I didn't realize that. I was going to troll her and then add a note that says, just kidding, you're doing a great job. But
yeah, no, it was everybody who commented.
Please contribute. So she's giving money to her friends over at Planned Parenthood of Greater Ohio. because they're in Ohio and Kasich's from Ohio. So, so that
Yay
is,
for going local. Also, very much
Yeah.
appreciate that. Don't give it to a national organization. Actually, give it to an organization in the state. So, two
It
thumbs
is.
up to that.
But I think this is a great story. It makes fun of John Kasich for something silly, but does raise the point.
Uh-huh.
Not a good guy.
Also, shout out to Sarah Enskeep. She did a great job on social media with it.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was fabulous. And it really does. I mean, just as he, continues to whitewash who he is on national television,
Man.
he's not a nice person. Like, he is Mr. 21 abortion and reproductive health restrictions, but he also is the same guy who called cops idiots for pulling him over, because why pull him over? Like,
Oh, okay.
he's too important to get pulled over by the highway patrol. And told people to get on his bus or get under his bus, and like, he's not a nice person.
Right.
People just like him because he's unpolished, so they think that he's a man that they can have a beer with. And yeah, he'll take your beer. That's what's gonna happen. He'll take your beer.
He was
Right.
Trump before Trump was Trump. I mean, really, when you go back to it, when you look at some of the speeches he's given, the
He's
stream of
not-
consciousness goofiness in
Oh,
his
yeah.
early speeches,
He's
he
really
was
bad.
Trump before Trump was Trump.
And not
Oh.
even early. It was like 2 weeks ago.
Well, yeah, and then he did it again 2 weeks ago because somebody let him off of his leash for a second.
Right. Yeah.
He had been really controlled for a while.
Why are we putting him on national news to be a consultant? I don't understand.
he's getting that spot, and Jeff Flake has got hired by CBS. I'm like,
Yes.
there are so many out of work journalists right now who could
Yes.
do this job 10 times
Mhm.
better for probably 10% of the salary.
Yeah. Instead of some washed
Hire
up
a real
former
journalist.
senator slash.
That's especially on
Governor.
point since so many people got let go. And
Yes.
Right. So Julie Klausner gets the
The 2 thumbs up.
yes. What did we call it? The
That's what she said.
that's what she said.
I think we've done that segment maybe twice since I've
Yeah, I
worked here.
know.
Somebody tell Kelley Copeland.
All right, to life gets the walk of shame. See, we go all the way through it again. There
Yes.
you go. Look at that.
Okay, so
It's almost like we should have an outline.
yeah. Okay. So it has been a while since we have been on the podcast here as a group. We passed right over the Women's March. They
Mhm.
took place across Ohio.
It was cold.
It was very well.
Well, not,
still
actually,
cold.
it wasn't as cold then as it was now. But
I'm going to tell you, if it was 0 degrees, I wouldn't have gone.
yes,
Right.
would have.
Um,
Okay, that.
The reason why I bring it up is Hannah, our organizer up in Cleveland, went to the Cleveland March and spoke.
Yes.
And so we've got her speech. It's on our blog.
Both the transcript and the video.
I
I think it's just a
maybe.
transcript.
But it was a great speech. Check that out. And then also just went live today, also on our blog. Links to both of these in the show notes. Ashley Underwood, our Patients Advocates coordinator, has a very nice blog post up there, along with some videos of both her speaking during Lame Duck on the State House steps, and 2 videos of her Patients to Advocates. So she's been coordinating women who have had abortions that have been trained on, on public policy,
Mhm.
on how to talk about this. And we've done a couple of videos with those 2 groups over the years. So definitely check that out. And then the last thing before we go is just the upcoming events. What's happening in the...
All I know that I can list off the top of my head is February 18th. I have a cookie party here at the office.
Ooh.
That's not an open invite, but if you are interested in attending, please email me at Kelley, KELLEYF, as in Freeman, at prochoiceohio.org. And the day after, we'll be selling those cookies that we made at Stand Up for Choice, which is going to be benefiting Women Have Options. Woohoo!
Right.
Yeah, February is the Bowl-a-thon kickoff, so that'll be coming soon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Stand Up for Choice, February 19th, Ace of Cups. That's 2619 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio, 43202. Doors open at 7:30.
I always get there at 7, but that's because I'm tabling.
Well, you get to go in.
Yeah, I
Yes.
do.
The doors are locked until 7:30.
They will not let you in.
And it's probably still going to be cold.
It will definitely still be cold.
But that's
Never
that's
getting warm.
a great event. Hilarious comedians benefiting our
friends.
abortion fund.
Yes.
So, okay. Sounds good. And we'll see everybody next week.
Bye.
Bye.